Hello, everyone. We will be starting momentarily. We are just. I'm just trying to figure out which viewers are coming from where. Okay, yeah, so yeah, YouTube has more. I figured. Yeah, we're live on Mixer as well because we're nice and people, the minority asked for it.
What episode is this?
This is episode 114. So can you see us on Mixer? I'm checking the Mixer chat. I will have them both open because I am nice. And can you see us on YouTube? So I don't know about you, Dan, but the immediate issue I'm having with the Surface headphones is that I can hear myself in them, but it's not instant. So there's a tiny delay. It sounds like I'm echoing in my own ear.
No, I'm not having that issue.
Maybe it's just because I'm...
I think it's maybe because you're set up.
Yeah, it's possible. Because if I do that... Can I still hear you? Dan? I can't hear you. Okay, so I can't do that. We'll just have to make do. I'll give myself a head. Yes, this is the Surface Headphones podcast. The world's first Surface Headphones podcast. We are the first, Dan, to do a podcast wearing Surface headphones. We have to be. This will go down in history. It'll be on Wikipedia.
I mean, I can hear you. A little bit of feedback. All right, I'm sending out the tweet now. Tweeted. I didn't mention us, so too bad. But I did copy and paste your nice little what we're talking about, so that's helpful.
Oh, well, thank you so much. All right, where's my voice recorder? There it is. All right, I'm ready to go when you are.
Almost.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? I've got them in to do, but if there's any reviews or anything you want to mention.
I think I did a bunch of reviews this week, but I think we talked about them too.
I think we already did the Studio 2.
Did the Studio 2, Yogo's T630. We shot that video. Yeah.
All right.
Talk about the Razer Blade 15,
so
but I haven't really used it much. So.
All right. I am now recording now.
On test. 1, 2, 3. Sure. Oh, sounds like it kind of recorded. Okay. I am now recording too. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 114 for November 30th, 2018. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino joined with Zach Bowden for another thrilling and this week Surface Headphone edition of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk all things Windows 10, Microsoft, Surface, Xbox, and more. If you're listening to this recorded, you probably don't get the joke, but Zach and I are both wearing Surface headphones this time around on the podcast. To give that a shot. And this week we're going to talk about a new build that went out for the Fast Ring, which brings some cool little new features that Zach will tell you about. We'll talk also a little bit about some Surface hardware rumors. Cortana device from Microsoft is also one of those rumors, which we shouldn't be too surprised at, but I guess there's some momentum. I can't talk. It's been a long week, folks. New Office icons, which is a little bit strange to talk about in the sense of like, usually icons don't get more than a bullet point and an update, but for some reason Microsoft has gone really out of their way to pat themselves on the back for new Office icons, and surprisingly people are very receptive to them, so we'll talk a little bit about that, and also the idea of Windows Lite. And I guess we'll also give me a little tease. I'll be in, well, we'll talk about that Qualcomm stuff. Dak, how are you doing this fine Friday?
I am not too bad. I'm enjoying the new Surface headphones. They sound pretty cool. You know, they're bigger than I thought they were going to be. The cups are actually quite large and they stick out quite a bit compared to the Bose QC35s.
Yeah, a little bit. I have obviously the Bose and the Sonys. The Sonys are pretty similar. A lot of it, if you're watching some of the videos, because of this arc here on the way the headphones pivot out, but that's also what makes them comfortable because they don't feel like they're squeezing your head. It's a very even thing, but it's also because they're gray, the platinum gray. they don't blend in. When they're darker colors, you don't notice them as much.
Yeah.
Black is slimming after all. But I was actually surprised because when I first put them on too, I was like, oh, these things look pretty huge. But then when I tried on the Sonys, I'm like, oh, they're actually kind of like the same size. And I didn't find the Bose that much smaller. But yeah, I don't like normally wearing dual-sided headphones on a podcast.
Me neither, but
it's weird to talk.
Yeah, it is. Like I said before, like these, it sounds like I'm echoing in my own head because the delay between the pass-through is just a bit off compared to just doing it normally. But yeah, I like them so far. The sound quality is good, but I think you mentioned it in your review already that it's a good sound quality, but it's not the best. You can get better. I definitely feel like I've heard better before, but they're more than fine for most things.
I found the sound quality to be very good. It's close to Sony. Sony has a lot more tricks up their sleeves, a little bit higher bit rates and all this kind of stuff, and a little bit more fine tuning. It's better than the Bose, though. The Bose, I think, are very flat. The Bose are good for the mids and highs, but not a lot of bass. These are more geared towards the lows and the mids, like the Sonys. So I find the sound here richer and more enjoyable. It's the audio noise, the active noise cancellation, which is good, but not amazing, which I'm not shocked at. Like, it's taken Sony years to get there. It's literally this third version that came out in September where people are like, oh, the Sonys are now like finally beating the Bose. Up to that point, it was like not a contest. So I want to give Microsoft a little wiggle room. It is good noise cancellation. I'll be using them on my flight, which I'm just going to segue into that now. So next week, I'm not positive we'll do a podcast. We'll see. I'll be taking one for the team here. I'm going to Hawaii. So, I've never been to Hawaii, so that's kind of fun. Qualcomm is paying for the flight there, which is very nice of them. And they do that for all the people who are going there, obviously, because it's super expensive otherwise. It's actually not that expensive. It's about $800 round trip, which for some reason I thought would be way more money. But the reason why a bunch of us in the media press are going out to Hawaii, specifically Maui, is because Qualcomm is doing their Snapdragon Tech Summit. This is, I think, the third year in a row they're doing this. I didn't go last year. I wasn't invited last year, but I'm invited this year. And that should tell you something. We don't do a lot of phone stuff anymore at Windows Central. We still do talk about it from the perspective of, Microsoft's products or what Zach and I prefer to use these days. But I'm going out there not to talk about phones. So that should be, a hint. We cover a lot of Windows 10 on ARM stuff on this podcast, and I'm still a big fan of it. I've been saying for years, a year and a half now, no, Qualcomm is super serious about this stuff, and they're going to keep pushing at it. Well, I next week I would expect some news maybe around Windows 10 and PC stuff. So, and I think it's very good news, but Dan, you'll have to tune in.
I thought Windows 10 and ARM was just a fad.
Yeah, exactly. I know. People keep thinking this Windows RT thing, which had one iteration. Meanwhile, we may be going on to a third iteration. I'm not just saying. This is cool stuff, and I really like Qualcomm. I don't think, I'm not trying to put Qualcomm on a pedestal here. I think Intel has a valuable role, and AMD does too. In fact, we heard this week AMD may be playing a part in Surface at some point. My bigger issue is I just want all three of these companies to go at each other like crazy and win us over as a customer because we all benefit in the end. But stay tuned next week. We'll see about doing the podcast. I might have to interrupt a little bit. It depends on the internet connection and all that. If I want to pack everything with me, it's a lot to bring. But we will have some video there. I'm going to be trying to do my own video this time. And we'll see what happens. But so stay tuned for that. That news, I'm just going to say the news you probably want to pay attention to will appear on Thursday. That is specifically, what's the date there? Thursday the 8th. So that's what I've heard you may want to pay attention to. But all week there'll be some cool news around Qualcomm. They got a lot of stuff coming on. Imagine there'd be 5G stuff too, which 5G is coming. It's getting real close. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get into this week's topic. So we got a few of them, the new builds, Surface hardware rumors. You can take both of those. I did install the new build, but I forgot. Tell me what's new about it, because I got it on my Surface Pro.
Sure. So this week's build, not as huge as the last couple of them. There's a few different changes here and there, but overall very minor build release. A touch of fluent for menus in start. This kind of first showed up in build 18.282, but in this week's build 18.290, they added it to a few more menus and whatnot. So it's now in the power button and user account control menus on the start menu. And they've also added icons to that menu as well. So you now have like a little moon for the sleep icon, a power down button for shutdown, and a restart icon for restart. They look kind of nice. We'll be talking more about icons a bit later in the show, but for now they are slowly... Right now, it looks like 19H1 is very much a UI update where they're just sort of touching up bits of different parts of the OS, making them look nice and bringing them up to just unity with other areas of the operating system, which I do prefer. I do enjoy a consistent user experience, obviously. And they're focusing a lot on the smaller details with 19H1, when it comes to UI at least, which is very exciting to see. In addition to that, they've also got a new option in settings to automatically sync your clock. So in the past, in the previous versions of Windows 10 or Windows, you could set the date and time, and that was it. And then Windows would automatically sync it, and that was it. You couldn't manually sync it yourself. Now you can do that. There's a button in settings for you to do that, which is very nice.
In fairness, wasn't that's an old feature though that was buried in the old settings, wasn't it?
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure there was always a like sync to server kind of thing that was buried in the old menu system.
You're right. You are right. Yeah.
And I think that's still there, but obviously they brought it forward to the new
settings,
UWP settings.
Yeah, well, it's just like a normal button now. You just press it and it does it automatically for you. So if your time's out of sync for some reason, which sometimes happens, I don't know why, but Windows will sometimes forget where it is or what time it is. You just press sync on it and it will connect up to Microsoft's special time server and bring you to the current date and time, which is nice. Also, in this build, Microsoft has updated the microphone icon that now appears in the system tray to tell you which app is using the microphone when that is happening. So when you highlight it in the system tray, it will say, hey, Windows Voice Recorder or Skype is using your microphone. And from there, I believe you can kill it and tell it to stop doing that if you so please. Then there's also some additions to Search and Cortana. Now, I actually might talk a little bit about the article I wrote this week here as well. Microsoft says they're exploring some options for improving these experiences in Windows. When you start a search now, you'll notice they've updated the landing page, giving recent activities a bit more room to breathe, adding light theme support, a touch of acrylic, and including all the search filter options as pivots from the get-go. We'd love to hear your feedback and blah, blah, blah. You can do reporting issues in the Feedback Hub and whatever else. But there's something more to this. Internally, Microsoft is working on splitting up Cortana Search, or rather, I say working on, they're more experimenting with the idea. And this is something we talked about on the podcast before, I believe. And I wrote an article, I think it was this week, also talking about this as well. Sort of talking about why this is a good idea. Because internally, as I said, they are experimenting with it. They are getting feedback on this idea. And the sort of main thought process behind the split is so that Microsoft can provide two unique experiences for both Search and Cortana. Right now in Windows 10, that's Cortana and Search are combined, and that really limits the Microsoft Assistant experience over the Search experience. Because when Windows 10 first came out, the Search UI was primarily Cortana dominated, right? It wasn't the Search primary function it is today, and that's because when Windows 10 first came out, users sort of hated what had happened to Search and was like, we just want Search back. We don't want all this assistant stuff in it. So over time, with all the recent Windows 10 releases, they've been slowly deprioritizing Cortana and more prioritizing the Search stuff instead, which is why Cortana more or less doesn't exist in Search anymore. I knew that was going to happen. I was trying to avoid it, but yeah. Splitting them up allows Microsoft to go, okay, fine, we can build out Search, dedicated search experience, which makes sense for people who just want to search. But we can also improve the Microsoft Assistant experience as well. We can actually build out a UI that makes sense for that without affecting people who just want to search and without affecting people who just want to use Microsoft Assistant. It's a great idea, but all the comments on the article I wrote was like, this is a terrible idea. I just want Cortana to be good. I'm like, this is how it becomes good. This is how Cortana gets back on form on Windows 10, by separating her from Search. So yeah, this is them sort of hinting that this is...
Sorry, someone comment, Alexa is taking over. It's clearly from an ignorant user who's never used Alexa on Windows 10 PC. Because if you have, and I'm going to keep drilling this home, you would never say such a stupid comment, because Alexa on PC is terrible. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And if you're into the Alexa system, you're not actually using it. And it'll never be better. That's the thing, because it doesn't do anything on Windows 10 PC. There you go. Okay, sorry.
There you go. Yeah, we hear this a lot, and it's like, guys, come on, man. You don't know what you're saying when you say stuff like that. Alexa would never be able to tap into your data on Windows 10 PC. because it's just not going to happen. Microsoft Assistant will always have that upper hand on Windows, at least. Of course, on Amazon's own platform, Alexa's free to do what she likes, but on Windows, Cortana will always be the dominant assistant that can always access the most data and help you the most. All Alexa can do in Windows is turn your lights on, right?
Which Cortana can do.
Which Cortana can also do, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's also just, and I think I mentioned this before, how only this was from the Information as a website, they got internal data, only 2% are using Alexa for shopping, which is just like, so all they're using it for is music, which of course they just got Apple Music today, which is nice. But the reason why they're like trying to get all these deals is because that's the only source of revenue now is people are using these things as stupid jukeboxes, and that's it. That's the future people want, apparently. Anyway, side topic, but I'm very passionate about this because it's dumb. All these assistants voice things suck right now. Just admit it. Like if you're taking teams on this, you're like taking teams on like sugar cubes, like having an opinion on something. It's just like, why would you have such a strong opinion about something so dumb? This stuff is so early to take sides on it. It's like, I don't know. It's just weird fanboyism over something that's crap. But there you go.
Wasn't that just Windows Phone in a nutshell? Oh, anyway, moving on. Yeah. We'll be talking a little bit more about Cortana later in the show as well. There's quite a bit going on internally around Cortana right now, which is very exciting. Other new changes in this build, Windows Update notifications. Starting with 19H1, when your device has an update requiring reboot, you will see a Windows Update icon with an orange indicator in the notification area, or the system tray. Why do they call it notification area? It'll be in the system tray. That's nice. Then there's that's it. That's pretty much it for this build. So like I said, overall not a major build, some nice tweaks and changes here and there.
Shout out to the people who are curious about running this on their daily machine. I have to say, so far it's been very stable. As Zach went through it, a lot of this is cosmetic UI stuff, not necessarily the underlying. Now, we don't know the full plans for this release yet, so literally next week they could put out a release that's going to be super buggy and, really screw up things. But I am running this. I have it on my Surface Pro. I'm updated to this week's for that one. I have it on a Surface Go and a Surface laptop. I still have to update those. But it's been very stable, even in the sense like the Surface Pro, because I have so many devices, was off, in standby for like 5 days. And when I turned it back on, there was 0 battery drain, which is something you usually don't see with fast ring builds. You get used to this idea of like, all right, I'm going to turn, it's dead. Okay, let me charge it up. But so far, they've been pretty stable, which I guess, like, again, I expect because it's UI changes. But if you're thinking about jumping in to get this stuff, because the light theme and everything does look super cool, I feel like if you have a newer machine, you can jump in on it, give it a shot. You can always roll back. The rollback feature has been working well for me too.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with how fast rollbacks actually take place. It's usually like
it does, right?
5 minutes. Yeah, it's really quick.
It's really, really quick, the rollback feature, which I was just like, I was not expecting it either. It literally goes back and it's a really good snapshot. It's just like, yes, everything's exactly the way it was.
See, it's funny. How can they do that going backwards but not forwards? Wouldn't it be amazing if a new Windows 10 feature update just required a single 2-minute install like that? That'd be amazing.
Well, I think that is the future for Windows Core OS.
I agree. That is definitely something they're looking into. But it is funny how they've already got that working backwards but not forwards. Just a thing I figured I'd mention. Anyway, yes, that's pretty much it for this build. 18290 now available in the fast ring. I am not running it on my main device still, but I guess I could. Like you said, these builds aren't crazy bad right now. They might get worse.
Right. At any release that it could start breaking things. So
yeah. Also, I hope, because Christmas is coming up, and usually at Microsoft, maybe it's different this year, I'm not sure, but in the past they'll take a few weeks off around Christmas. They won't compile many Windows builds internally, so the Insider program has a break. It would be nice if just before that break happens, they shipped sets again, so insiders can just play about with it and they can get more feedback over the holidays. I know it's probably not ready, and to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't show up until 19H2 at the earliest, but it would be nice just to put it back in the builds for now, with the entire intention to pull them again before 19H1 ships. But make that clear in the blog post so that, you probably will still get blogs saying, they've cancelled sets again or something. But just put them back in the builds just so we can mess about and see what's new with sets since they were last in the Insider builds. Maybe just that'd be nice. Anyway, that's it for the
So,
new build.
so the sets thing I'm really kind of curious about because obviously, I mean, it was a year ago, just over a year ago, I was briefed on sets by Microsoft in person and told about this and kind of shown it, and then eventually it came out. What have they done since? Like, are we expecting? I think some of the complaints were right about the visual appearance of it was people didn't really like it, all that. Like, are we expecting it to like look different?
I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. Because I don't know if you remember, Dan, but before the sets thing was announced, you and I had heard about this idea months in advance. It was called Tabbed Shell at the time, but back then it wasn't the like just grouping everything under one window idea that it came to be. It was literally a window would have a plus button, and then you pressed it, it'd open a new instance of that same app, just like it works in a web browser. You press the plus button in Edge or Chrome, and it brings you to a new tab, a new web page, not a new program. That sort of changed when it was announced. So I'm wondering if they might go back to that idea instead, because I think it's less confusing for users. Because people, they see the tabbed UI and they're like, yeah, okay, so you press the plus button and it brings me to another instance of whatever I'm running, which makes sense for some cases, but not all apps. So not all apps would have to have the plus button or whatever else. Some people prefer the idea of grouping different apps under one window. Others prefer just having the same app under one window under different tabs. Maybe they'll add an option for both, who knows? But I think that's the kind of stuff they're looking into. How do users understand this feature when they see it? And can we train them to think something else when they see a plus button? I think that's the kind of stuff they're looking into. Also, I think like in Edge, because it's tied to Edge heavily as well, I think they're working on I think it's called Web Shell internally, but they're basically working on like a home page that's powered by the internet or like web technologies that has timeline in it and your recent documents and your programs and everything else, and it should look nice. It'll be like a hub for everything on your PC, but built into Edge and sets. So that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I hope it shows up soonish again.
I do have to admit, Microsoft lately does seem to be very concerned about appearances, and I mean in the sense of UI and everything. And we'll talk about the icons, as one example of this. But for those who've been complaining and yearning for Microsoft to, really start to put polish on Windows 10, it seems like at least that's kind of what they're doing right now. And I think that's a really good sign. I do, those little icons, even in the power menu for the new fast ring build, like it's nice, right? And even the fact that you can just hover over them and they pop open. These are just nice, delightful things that make the OS just nicer to look at and use. And I think a lot of people have been arguing for a long time it's been missing from Windows 10. And so it seems like they're really kind of and everything. And we'll have a new, we heard about Fluent Design a year and a half ago. It seems like now, though, it's kind of like full steam, right? All those teams are engaged. They're all like putting out releases and doing this kind of stuff. And I think this is good. Even things like Light Theme, which seems like something that not a ton of people were necessarily asking for, but then you and I were both like, oh, okay, whatever. Then we tried it, like, whoa, actually, Light Theme's pretty awesome. But it's just nice to finally see those shell changes coming into this release, and hopefully we'll see more of it. I mean, more polish is more polish. So
completely off topic, but our Mixer stream, because right now, for those of you listening, we're streaming to both YouTube and Mixer, but the Mixer webpage says we have 4,247 listeners, which I imagine is a mistake. Still funny though. I was looking up.
They heard. Oh yeah, they heard you. Well, let's own is rebroadcast. Yes, they heard you complaining about Mixer.
They did.
Not getting enough views.
The reason we're streaming on YouTube again is because the Mixer viewership hasn't been too high as of the last few podcasts, and on YouTube you just get more viewership because we have more subscribers on YouTube. But turns out on Mixer we have 4,000 people listening.
Oh, we're being hosted by Channel One.
Is that a popular channel?
I suppose so. I guess hello Mixer.
Hello Mixer.
We do this weekly. We'll be here weekly.
Yeah, if you want to tune in, we'll be here whenever you want us to be. Okay, that's cool. Let's move on to our next story. Surface hardware rumors, because everybody loves some Surface hardware rumors. It feels like we're always talking about Surface hardware rumors here on the Windows Central podcast, and that's because there's always something rumored in the rumor mill. But this week, some information from Brad Sam's new book. For those who don't know, Brad Sams is a Microsoft watcher, been doing this for quite a while. He released a book called Beneath the Surface, and in it, he talks about the past, present, and future of the Microsoft Surface hardware line. At the end of the book, there is some information on what Microsoft may be planning down the line for the next couple of years, 2019 and 2020. The first of which is something we have talked about many times in the past, Andromeda. Yes, Microsoft is still planning to release Andromeda, but maybe not in the form factor we originally envisioned it as. When Andromeda was first pitched and built, it was a mobile device. It could fit in your pocket, had phone capabilities, etc., etc. However, in the summer, it came from Mary Jo Foley reported that it wasn't going to be pocketable anymore. Microsoft were looking into perhaps making it slightly larger, more tablet size that could fold out into a larger tablet, maybe even a laptop form factor. And in Brad Sam's book, he also says he's hearing the same. In addition, he's also hearing that they are planning to try and announce this device at the end of 2019, which is what we've been reporting since we found out it was delayed.
Since it moved from 2017 to 2018.
Yeah. I hope that these reports of it being bigger are wrong, because what's the point otherwise? What is the point?
Well, to give Jez Corden, our games editor, some credit here, or maybe it was you who said it, that this idea of like, we've always been talking about the problem with this device conceptually, right? Which is they're going to put it out there and people are like, oh, they released a phone, and we've been saying, well, no, it's not a phone, it's a tablet that can make phone calls. Oh, yeah, so it's a phone. Where are the apps? It's got no apps. It's a terrible phone. I'm going to go buy an iPhone. And part of the solution to that is simple, just distance, right? It's like a breakup with someone you've loved a long time. The longer you go, the less it hurts. If Windows Phone, by the time this would have come out, would be 3-4 years basically dead. And so they can distance themselves from that way. The other way, though, is you do release a device that clearly is not a phone, or it's not as pocketable, or it's still small. And then people would, and then you could always release a smaller one, right? Kind of like version 2. It's like, we shrunk it down by 30% through amazing technology we always had. I think that's one possibility, but I kind of agree with you in the sense that, like, why have something that big?
It's because, like, how I'm looking at it is that the idea, that the whole point of Andromeda originally was that it was supposed to be Microsoft's Surface take on the mobile form factor. You know what Surface is like. It comes out and goes, let's spin this form factor on its head. This was going to be a mobile device. It can also be a tablet. The 2-in-1 form factor that Surface pioneers now coming to phones. But if it's going to be bigger, then it's just a tablet that can also be a bigger tablet, or a laptop, which is already exists with the Surface Pro. The Surface Pro is a tablet that can also be a laptop. So I'm not sure what making it bigger will change when it comes to making Andromeda a more viable product. I think it suffers the same problems it will suffer from being a pocketable as it would be larger. Maybe they'll release both. Maybe they'll do like an Andromeda and Andromeda Plus, a bigger one for people who just want it as like a laptop, and a smaller one for people who want it as a phone. I don't know. But for the record, I haven't heard from my sources that Andromeda will be bigger. Apparently, they're still working on a pocketable version. Fingers crossed that's true. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the Andromeda front. No new information on what it will be, like features-wise and stuff. Brad also writes about a Surface Studio monitor coming in the 2020 timeframe. Now, this is something we've all wanted for a long time. And now it turns out, yeah, they're working on it. But 2020, that's a while away. Why it's taking them so long to do this? I assume it's because they don't want to eat into Surface Studio 2 sales, maybe? But I assume a Surface Studio monitor will be, it looks like a Surface Studio, maybe with a thinner base. And
here's the thing, and I don't think people necessarily quite understand this. This thing's going to be still stupid expensive.
Oh, yeah.
If I had to make an estimate sort of Surface Studio 2, the display probably costs around $2,000 for that device.
You reckon?
Because if you think about it, it's a custom 3:2 aspect ratio. So most displays, when you go buy a monitor from Samsung, LG, Dell, HP, whatever, most of those displays are just come off from LG or Samsung or another manufacturer that's even lower cost, but they're mass produced and they just stamp their name on it, tweak it up, and there you go. The Surface Studio display is completely custom. It's no one makes a 3:2 this size, nor do they make one at over 4,000 or 4K resolution, nor do they make one with touch and inking support. And the inking, I've seen how it's done. I think you saw it too. There's 4 panels on this thing that all have separate processing systems for the inking, so that when you ink in one corner and you go across to the other, it's all consistent. So there's like so much technology in this thing. And then they factory calibrate them. Each one is calibrated before they pack it and ship it off. And that's why this thing is super expensive. You're buying a really nice display. So they could shave off some money, but it's still going to be like really, really expensive.
Yeah. But this is something people want. This is, I think, the number one request from fans regarding people who are interested in the studio. It's like, I'd love that, but I just want to use it on my own custom-built PC. So
yeah, and I get that. I mean, again, the reason why Microsoft made this like the way it is, and it's in my review too, it's a single device with a single plug, and it's a whole experience. You got audio, you got your keyboard, you got your mouse. As soon as you just make it a display, like it ruins the beauty of it. Now you're just in the same league as, other gaming laptop or gaming PCs with tons of wires and cables. So they have to figure a way to make it clean. Also, the display weighs a lot. So you need a counterbalance on the bottom to sort of hold it up. You can't just put this on a normal stand. It'll tip over. I don't think people realize how heavy this thing is on the top part. You don't feel it because of the hinges, but there's a lot of engineering challenges, I imagine, that need to be made. Yeah. And then you have the Windows Hello camera and all that stuff too.
Since we're being hosted by Channel 1 and Mixer, we should probably talk a little bit about Xbox and rumored Xbox hardware. In 2019, Microsoft are planning to release 2 Xboxes, according to Brad Sams in his book. One version does not have an optical disc, so this is very important. This is something that gamers probably shouldn't start panicking about, because there will always be a version of the Xbox One that has a disc drive. But for those of you who are all digital and perhaps could use the extra space or spend less money since it doesn't have a disc drive, Microsoft is looking into releasing an Xbox One without a disc drive in 2019. So it should be smaller and cheaper. It will be the cheapest Xbox One, I think, that they will have ever sold, which is very nice indeed. There's also apparently a revised Xbox One S in the works as well, which I assume will be a bit slimmer, but will still have a disc drive in addition. So yes, that's the Xbox rumor front. Like I said, gamers who love their physical media, don't worry, Microsoft isn't completely abandoning physical media. That's not what's happening here.
Microsoft... I was going to say, and we've mentioned this before with the Xbox stuff, like I feel like the console every 3 years major overhaul, I think those times are over. I think pretty much every year we're going to see, or 12 to 16 months, we're going to see a new Xbox. I say quotes because they're not going to be, some of them will be for the One X level, some will be for the One S level, but we'll see variations and improvements and things like that coming along, more on the cadence of like how Surface treats its devices. I don't mean frivolous updates either. Like, I know they always do the new color things, but I mean like when there's an actual advancement that they could then package and sell off to people. And I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think that we will see every now and then, every 7 or 8 years or so, I guess, as the generations used to be, we will see them drop the sort of Xbox name brand. So right now it's Xbox One, but in a couple of years' time, I think they will drop the One in favor of something else, and that will be considered the new generation for gamers. But for everybody else, it's still just the normal thing, because Microsoft is very much into backwards compatibility now, and all that name change will signify is that the games that are built for this console will not run natively on the previous console, on the Xbox One line. So say, for example, Microsoft releases Xbox 2. Xbox 2 games won't run on Xbox One, but Xbox One games will run on Xbox 2. So you can upgrade to an Xbox 2 and still have all of your games spanning back to the Xbox original, but you will not. Xbox One users won't be able to play Xbox 2 games. You'll have to buy an Xbox 2 to get that working, unless the developer builds 2 versions of the game, one for the Xbox 2 and one for the Xbox One. Kind of like how GTA 5 worked when that came out. It was an Xbox 360 game and an Xbox One game. I think that's what we're going to see, because I don't think it's possible to just outright stop doing generational jumps, because Sony is going to keep doing it, and
Sure.
And that's the Xbox's number one competitor there, and I don't think they can just say, well, we're not doing it anymore, we're going to support Xbox One forever, because developers are going to want more power, and eventually it'll get confusing because they have to start dropping specific models of the Xbox One, like the original huge VCR box version, but then the One S still works maybe, or the One S gets dropped as well, then it's only the One X and the One Y. Who knows? It'll get confusing, so I think it's important for them to differentiate at a certain point. So, yeah.
Yep.
Also, there's more rumors. We're not even done. AMD Surface laptop. This is something I'm not really haven't looked into much because I don't really care about what's inside the thing as long as it's cool.
It's amazing how many people do care.
Yeah, but the rumor is that Microsoft is looking into building an AMD-powered Surface laptop for release in the fall of 2019. Reasons being is that Intel kind of dropped the ball recently when it comes to trying to push out its 10 nanometer processors. So they're looking into alternatives in that area. That's not. Maybe they won't do it. Maybe they will. They're prototyping different versions of it internally. But is that something you would be interested in, Dan, or do you not care about the AMD Intel thing?
I don't have a strong opinion on this. So the arguments for this, people seem to be really focused on like AMD. They can have more cores to them. The power efficiency may be better. I haven't used my HP Omen desktop. I had been using was an AMD Ryzen processor. It was good. I literally could not tell the difference. Like there was nothing about it that was like, this is that AMD inside. I think for like game streamers with the more cores, we're supposed to be more efficient. But I don't game stream, so not a concern. I do like the idea of just AMD and Intel competing against each other because AMD, when I was at, I went to their headquarters a few months ago. And they're a cool company. They're talking a lot of smack about Intel and about how they're really going to challenge them and all this kind of stuff. And I like hearing that smack talk because again we benefit at the end of the day from it. So, but I don't know. I like to see what AMD can do here, but I don't feel particularly strong about it. So we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Do you think it could be cheaper compared to the Intel models?
No, I mean, there would be maybe some price differentiation, but I don't think as consumers we're necessarily going to like see it. I mean, AMD's been making high end stuff. Like they told me they're like we're just going high end. Like it's servers and gaming stuff and just really as many cores as possible. Not necessarily budget. I mean, they do some budget things too, but they're really more concerned about the graphics and everything. So I don't know. This could also just be fire under Intel, hey guys, cut us better deals, all that kind of stuff. So
now also in the rumor mill that this is something me and Dan have talked about on the podcast before. In fact, I've even mentioned it in a couple of articles. But a dedicated Cortana speaker from Microsoft. This is something they've been prototyping internally for a while now. I believe, and this is I guess an exclusive, I believe it's codenamed Morrison. That's what I've heard. And
okay.
what this device is basically an always listening Cortana device. But and Brad Sams is also hearing now that yes, they are working on something like that, and it could even be announced as early as spring 2019. Now we've all been hearing that there will be an event in that time frame, likely where HoloLens 2 will be announced. HoloLens 2, the Cortana device, and I think they might also have Surface Hub 2 there as well, just to talk a bit more about how they work together and whatnot. But this Cortana device is going to be more aimed at being productive and meetings and people in office spaces, open offices, or in meeting rooms, places like that. I'm sure if you really wanted, you could buy one and use it at home, but this is going to be definitely more for the people trying to keep people productive, because that's Microsoft's mojo right now. It's like, we release things that keep you productive and keep you working and creative and all that stuff. And I assume this speaker will follow that same path. In addition, I've heard from my sources that it will support multiple users. So using voice recognition, I guess. Maybe it'll have a facial recognition thing as well. I don't know. But it will be able to pick apart different people in the room and know who they are. So for example, if you're in a meeting room and you say, hey, pull up that presentation I was working on yesterday, and you're in a room of 5 people, it will know that you're the person that wants to pull up your presentation rather than pulling up someone else's presentation in the room. That would be very interesting. That is, again, none of this is confirmed to ship. It is stuff they're working on internally for this device. I can see that happening. It makes sense for a Microsoft powered speaker, right? Being all that, productivity, meeting, business focus. It would be very interesting to see. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in the past. So the question is, what do they bring to the table that's new and different, right? This can't be the Invoke speaker with a Microsoft logo underneath it, right? So we've gone through so many of these smart speakers now that they're just so generic. It's like, we can make a big one, we can make a small one. It's like, that's the choice, right? we can make an expensive Apple one that doesn't do anything except play Apple Music. Like, so the question is, how do you push this category forward? And I don't know 100% that's what they're trying to do, but that is typically how the Surface team, I would like to think, thinks about these topics. So that brings up the whole thing I've been saying for a while, that as soon as you add a display to these devices, they become a lot more interesting and useful. They're just fun. You can look at them. They can show information to you. They can do what's called ambient computing, or ubiquitous computing. These words we've been throwing around for a while. This idea that like there's just a computer over there on your counter displaying information. This is how Alexa works, right? Alexa Echo does this. And I have to admit, they do a pretty bad job at it. They always show me stories I could completely care less about. And it's just like new twins born in Idaho that have 3 eyes. I don't know. It's just like really dumb stuff. And so, but Microsoft, I think, could do something there with that. So as soon as you add a screen to that, maybe add voice translation, which they've demoed before. If you go back to the build, events, they showed a speaker like this actually in a conference room that was doing live translation, was taking notes and all this kind of stuff. I think those are the lines we need to be thinking about how they would be looking at this. It's like, all right, this isn't just a thing that's going to do skills and add to your to-do list, which is cool, but come on. I mean, we can do better than that. Nor is it just going to be something that plays music, because again, we have that today. Who cares? It's whatever. And so this is going to be something radically different. Maybe not radically, but it's going to be more than what we've seen so far in the market. It has to be. And that's where I think the Surface team could surprise us. And I've said this before, where the Surface team has to probably have like a bunch of ideas of products that they're always working on and evolving. Doesn't mean they're coming to market. It just means that there's people whittling away on these things until they go, eureka, and this is something we can do. And they present it to, Satya and the team, and like, we should do this. Here's why. But if you think about how everything hooks into Microsoft services, how their mission statement is about how to make you more productive and empowering you, take that and apply it to whatever these smart speakers are supposed to be. Or what does that mean? And I think that's a really interesting question. I agree 100% that they have to be thinking about this stuff. It's just what's it going to be? I honestly don't know.
I assume there'll be a big tie-in with things like Microsoft Teams and Skype and all that stuff as well, for being collaborative and stuff. So yeah, that's very exciting. This is stuff we've been hearing about for a while. I would love to see Microsoft do a Cortana speaker. I mean, this goes back to the whole we're seeing a lot of movement internally around Cortana right now, not just on Windows, but on Android and iOS, and in dedicated hardware from Microsoft themselves. So as Dan has said in the past, we're seeing more Cortana in 2018 than we have done in 2016 and 2017, even though more people today seem to think Cortana's dead than previous. I don't know how that works, but there you go.
I think part of it's wishful thinking. People like to see something fail. I mean, but that's the internet today, right? Yeah. Jez was talking about that with Fallout 76. People like jumping on and piling on something. The biggest story lately is how media is finally turning around and being like, holy cow, Microsoft's actually like bigger than Apple now in terms of market value. And like, when did they become cool again? But that's a turnaround, right? That's when I talk to random people, usually if I'm like in a Uber or something like that, about Microsoft, the consensus is like Microsoft's actually kind of a cool company now. Like, there's no negativity sort of associated with them, or it's not as much, and that's important. So hopefully they can leverage that with Cortana as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of superficial thingies, let's talk about Office icons. I actually have, at least I told Zach, I showed him, like, so there's the new Outlook icon on iOS, which is also not that impressive, I suppose. But I showed Zach, I was like, oh, new icon. He's like, oh, that's neat. And that was it. That was about the extent of our conversation. And then like 3 weeks later, Microsoft's like, blog post, video, here's all our new icons. And to be fair, we're working actually with their design team for parts of the website right now. And it is fun to talk to designers because they really do think about things that, like, you and I aren't designers, so I was just like, just draw something and give it to me. But when you see how ideas evolve and concepts and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's why you're a designer. Okay, because there's just a way that they come up with this stuff that's really kind of unique. And so if you look at go read the blog post or the video about how they evolve these icons, all that. Listen, these icons are iconic, at least for the services they're using. Like Office is a big deal. And so whether you're on iOS, Android, Mac OS, Windows 10, in fact, Office is still the thing that people use every day. I think it's more like, the new icons are cool, whatever. I think it's more just interesting. I think we're going to see more of this refinement and focus on detail and looks, bringing Windows and the ecosystem into the 21st century. I think that's a more interesting part. The question is, how does it work with live tiles, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe what the icons look like. I'd say they're less flat, they're less Metro design and more fluent design, I guess, that they're a little bit more 3D. They have a depth to them and stuff, more color, which is nice. But a little bit more life to them, which makes sense with the fluent design system. We've seen the Windows design language move forward since the Metro days. It's no longer flat everywhere, make everything as 2D as possible. Things do have a bit of depth and a bit of shadow now, and those icons should reflect that. And I think they will. They do look very nice. And in the video and like the concept art that they posted, Microsoft posted, they also had updated the icons for things like photos, all of the Windows 10 built-in apps basically. And when it's all put together like that, it looks really nice. So hopefully, whoever's in charge of the Office icons will also take charge in updating all of the icons across Windows.
I think the person who's in charge of it, and I'm forgetting his name. I actually just started following him on Twitter, although he doesn't tweet very much. But you and I know him. Yeah. Oh, it's John Friedman. Oh. So if you don't know, John Friedman, he's been at Microsoft for a long time. And Zach and I went to a talk of his at Build where it was hilarious because it was just like, hi, I've been the guy that designed all sorts of failures at Microsoft. He did, what was it? He did, was it the Courier he worked on?
He worked on Courier, yeah.
And then what were the other ones? Was it Zune?
Was it Zune? It was Vista or something? I can't remember.
Oh, it was, I think the Spot Watch too.
Yeah, he did do the watch. I think, he did Kin, I think. That was it. He worked on Kin.
Oh, Kin. Yeah. Right, he did Kin. So John Friedman was working on designing all these products, and he was joking about how they always kind of ended up failing, but, he still works at Microsoft, but it's not his fault. But he does have a real awesome sense of design. And so we're like, oh, well, what are you guys doing now? What do you do now? And he's like, oh, I'm in charge of Office. And I was just like, well, that's weird. Because think of Office as like, it's a word processor. How do you make it pretty? But if you look at the new Office 2019, like actually it's awesome looking, right? They actually really made Office really cool. But him, or at least his team, is in charge of those icons, which after hearing him talk, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I get it now.
And they look good. John, if you're listening, please bring them to the UWP apps. I know you're not updating those anymore, but just do it for me. Just make them look, because they look pretty, and I just use them. They look nice. Just please update them, the icons.
I think the bigger question too is just, are we going to see this stuff bleed over into the rest of the inbox apps?
I hope so. Yeah. There's nothing I hate more than inconsistent icons across Microsoft's own services. I hate that so much. They've only just got it so that they basically match. And now they want to change them all up again. Come on, let's keep this consistency going. Let's update them all.
So I guess also that brings up, a lot of people pointed out how they juxtapose to the live tiles look a little, makes the live tiles look antiquated a little bit. So, and we've railed about this a few times, that like live tiles have not had any shine or polish add to them in like years now, since 8.1 almost. I know they used to talk a Build like, oh, we have new features you can do and display information, and there's really been nothing there. So what do you do with live tiles now? I mean, I don't think the idea behind them or the benefits behind them are necessarily dead, but how would you redesign them or get rid of it? Like, what would you do to make live tiles more interesting, or what would you replace it with?
I mean, this is years ago now, Microsoft Research had a demo where they built interactive live tiles that you could actually tap on and interact with without actually opening the tile in the app itself, which was a cool idea, but I think they found use case issues with well, then how do you open the app? Like, if it's the calculator tile, for example, if the tiles are the entire calculator, then how do you get into the app? It's like...
This is the usability issue that Apple faces, in my opinion, with iOS and the 3D Touch, which I never use. I just never remember it's there. I just open the app. I'm sure there's someone out there who loves it and uses it every day, but I think it's a usability issue. So I don't see that as a solution.
Someone else mentions mixed view. Yeah, this is actually something Microsoft has prototyped for Windows 10 itself on desktop. But because you've seen what mixed view looks like, if you haven't, check out our McLaren review. Basically, what it is on the McLaren device, which was a cancelled Windows phone. If you hovered your finger over the screen, the tile would expand and explode and provide smaller tiles that sort of hover around your main tile with additional information and stuff. Microsoft did prototype this idea for the Windows 10 start menu, but it didn't work like that. It was slightly different. Instead of it being the live tile itself, it was you could add new live tiles to the start menu just by pressing a little plus button, and it would explode with all the different recommendations for what you would want to add. It was supposed to make customizing the start menu easier, because doing that's a pain. But I think Microsoft did the research and found that nobody uses the start menu or customizes the start menu much anyway. So there wasn't much point in putting the effort into building that feature out. At least not right now. Perhaps down the line, if start menu tiles usage increases, then maybe they will introduce that feature. But this is the kind of stuff they look into all the time. They are always prototyping features that we never hear about or we never see. Some of which actually look kind of polished, like internally in internal builds in these low-level branches that you never see public release. There's all sorts of experimental features and cool stuff going on that they're looking into. Like, how can this ship? Is this a viable idea that we can ship to people that we use? And if they can't see people using it, then they don't ship it anymore. That's just how it goes. But yeah. I just knocked my mic over. Mm-hmm. I'm very excited to see these new icons. I hope they show up in the inbox apps as well, and of course Microsoft services other than Office, because that would be very nice indeed.
I was going to say that I think the biggest issue is that, like you said, we've seen a telemetry on this, that people don't use the start menu. Now the question is, do people not use the start menu because they don't like the live tiles, or do they not use the start menu because people pin stuff to the desktop as just icons, or they pin it to the taskbar, or they just type in the program that they want, which is actually how I use it a lot of times too. I do use live tiles for certain things I want to see information on. But the problem with live tiles on desktop is they're not always present. You need to click a start and then watch them, right? It worked on phone because the phone you would pull out of your pocket, turn on, and it was like a screen that showed, it was like a summary. You could just go through, bounce your eyes around, like, oh, that's my updates and stuff like that. And you didn't need to necessarily update the app or open the app. But desktop doesn't work like that. So I don't know how you solve that problem. Like, what is the ideal? How would you move to a newer system or a more modern system, knowing people's usage and habits when they're just doing things like, even like, I'm back in the day, Windows 95, I would be that guy with tons of stuff on my desktop, right? That was like, and people would organize them in little grids, and it was all, it's like organizing your room. I don't do that now. Now it's right click, disappear. I don't want any icons on my desktop, just pure. So then everything gets pinned to my taskbar that I use most of the time. And then when I don't necessarily use, I go to my my search, and a lot of people I think do that. So I don't know how you revitalize the start menu. It's either always present, which I don't think people will want. I don't know. This is a weird usability kind of design issue that people have to think about.
Maybe Windows 8 really was onto something removing the start button.
Yeah, because it forced you into the tiles. And when you force people to the tiles, they are actually very useful. Mm-hmm. But then people hated being forced into it. And if you make it up, you can still kind of do it. You can make a full start menu while staying in desktop. I've done that on my some of my tablets and stuff. But I guarantee you that number of people using it like that is probably super small. I don't think most people will do that.
I think Microsoft knew from when they were developing Windows 8 that the start menu usage had gone down considerably after Windows 7 introduced the superbar, known now as the normal taskbar, when the ability to pin icons to the taskbar and for it to act more like a dock was introduced. People just pin everything there now, which is kind of like Mac OS. Mac OS has the dock, and arguably that's a better system for a desktop operating system, right? Because it's like everything you work on is down at the bottom of the screen. Always, you can always access it. You don't have to go into an extra menu to get there. It makes sense, right? And the start menu is an old school idea now. If you think about it, it was introduced in Windows 95 and basically is the same thing since. It's a program launcher. You go in there to launch your programs. So, it will be interesting to see how Microsoft thinks about Windows in the future when it comes to things like the start menu and stuff. I'm not suggesting they'll remove the start menu, not anytime soon, but I think we are going to see some changes to how...
I'd like to see a radical different option. And when you have an out-of-box experience, when you're installing Windows for the first time, it's setting up. It presents you two ways, right? You can see it now, blue screen, the Cortana with the white line drawing. It's like, we can do the old start menu way, bloop, bloop, bloop. Or we can try the new, call it Aurora experience. You can give it a cool buzz name like Aurora, right? Which just sounds badass. And then you're like, yeah, I'll try that. And then, you can always switch later, have that whole thing. And give like a completely radically different usability, experience. I think that would be really neat. It's just what that experience is. I have no idea.
I mean, if you look at Surface Hub OS on the Surface Hub 2X, Windows Core OS for Surface Hub, that does have a start menu. It has like a landing page, which is entirely timeline, more or less. It's things you're working on recently, which I think is much more useful than just providing an apps list for you to launch your apps. I think if the start menu became more of a launchpad or like just an at-a-glance, here's everything on your system, things like maybe battery time, which I know is on the system tray, but let's pretend it isn't for this case, in the start menu, but it also has like, here's the last 3 documents you were working on, here's your most used programs, here's today's weather, stuff like that. I think that would be much more interesting than just having it be just, I want to pin Chrome to my tiles.
Yeah, I do like the idea of like it just being a translucent background in the center. You have like your kind of actually look at HoloLens, right? How you have the little floating start menu that's just your most used apps, stuff like that. But then to the sides and stuff like that, you can have other bits of information, headlines or emails or something like that, little alerts. And so you still get a translucent background, that experience, versus just like a wall of tiles, which I don't think it's good on desktop at all. And you get valuable information that's kind of coming in and out. And that would be kind of cool, I think. So I like that idea, actually. Microsoft, take that. Do something with it. Make it cool. Complete my vision of what I want. And call it Aurora, the Aurora experience. I don't know. I'm just saying that's like when you hear like I guarantee you give a stupid name like that, the media sites will pick up on it, and they'll give you coverage.
What are your thoughts on the name Windows Lite? Lite.
The problem always with a Windows Lite type, anytime you use light, it implies that the other thing is heavy, bulky, and so. But I get it conceptually. This is always a struggle that Microsoft faces with Windows 10 is, making it thinner. But tell us why. What's Windows Lite supposed to be?
So yes, someone on Twitter, I think his name is Tero Alhonen, perhaps. He's on Twitter. He looked into the Windows 10 SDK this week and noticed a new SKU being listed in there, something called Lite, Lite. Now this is new to this SDK. This wasn't showing up before, and this is added onto the list of SKUs we already know about, things like Cloud, which is Windows 10s, Enterprise, IoT, Andromeda. They're all listed in there as they have been for a while now. But now Lite is a new addition to this. I've sort of done a little bit of digging into this, and I think Walking Cat also posted some similar findings. This is a Windows Core OS thing. It's a product of Windows Core OS. And this is me speculating. This isn't I've heard this from sources. This is me just sort of doing an educated guess here. I think this is Polaris, and they've just changed the product name, the product SKU name internally, because a while ago now I had heard that Polaris had sort of fallen off the map internally. It wasn't being it wasn't showing up in the places where it normally would show up alongside Andromeda and Aruba and all that other stuff. Polaris had sort of just disappeared, and I assume that's because it's so far out that they're not really focused on it right now. They're more focused on the Andromeda and Service Hub 2X stuff. But I think what they did is they've sort of taken Polaris and sort of rethought it a little bit, because let's be honest, Polaris, from what it is, was never going to be a full Windows 10 replacement on day one. it very much is like a light version of Windows 10, and I think they are appropriately naming it internally now. So this Windows Lite could just be Polaris. It's a desktop version of Windows Core OS with C Shell, fluid animations, an entire modern base. So Win32 programs don't run natively, all that good stuff that we've talked about before for Polaris, but just now called Windows Lite. Now, it being referred to as Windows Lite in the SDK does not mean it will ship as Windows Lite. Windows Cloud is not, it's not called Windows Cloud, it's called Windows 10S. So I think what we'll see here is that, but Polaris will be called something else. I don't think it'll be called Windows Lite. That would be, like, as you said, a silly thing to do, because
so what do you say Windows is all fat and heavy?
Yeah.
I can see it now.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, let's be honest. Current Windows is
half the people on
beast.
Twitter who follow us would be like, "Oh, you mean Windows fat?" Yeah, it could get really ugly. It's also just not an exciting name.
I think Windows Aurora is a great name for it.
There you go. Just call everything Aurora, because Aurora is just. Why does Aurora just sound awesome?
It does.
I don't know.
It makes me want to use it.
I don't know. Cool word, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's just like cool how Microsoft called, their assistant Cortana for a long time internally. And we're like, use it as the official name, and they did. Like, that's the only reason why it's called that publicly. But yeah, we always get into this problem too about, like, what do you call stuff? No one ever agrees on what's cool and what's good. So
I am curious if with these Windows Core OS devices, if they're going to drop the 10 from Windows 10, because Windows, I don't know, because I think it gets murky when you start building different Windows 10, because everyone looks at Windows 10 now and it's a desktop operating system. That's what it is. I think if they just drop Windows 10, or if they keep Windows 10 for Windows 10 Home, Pro, and Enterprise, that's Windows 10. But then they could have Windows Aurora, which is Windows Core OS devices. Windows Aurora for Andromeda, or for the Surface Mobile. Windows Aurora for Surface Hub 2X. Windows Aurora for, Windows Lite devices.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is people immediately, when they hear that, like, oh, Windows 10 and Windows Aurora, like, oh, can I run my Windows apps on it? And then you have to go through the whole, like, well, yeah, but it raises all sorts of confusion, where I think I think Microsoft still fixated on this idea that, like, it's just Windows, just call it Windows 10, and in this case, Windows 10, and don't worry about the other stuff.
Yeah, well, Microsoft has backed itself into a corner when it comes to all these SKUs, because there's 100 different Windows 10 desktop SKUs now. You've got Home, Pro, Enterprise, S Mode Edition, Education, Pro for workstations. It's ridiculous. So for them to have a consistent sort of naming across Windows 10 Classic and Windows Core OS, I think they need to minimize all the SKUs in Classic OS first. They need to get rid of Home. Here's how I imagine, if I was in charge, here's how I would do it. I would drop Home, or rather, I'd upgrade Windows 10 Home to Pro, and I'd have Pro and Enterprise, and obviously Server, as legacy, as Windows 10 legacy. And then I'd have the Windows Core OS. Windows Core OS would become the new Home and the new S. That's how I would do it. Because then you'd have the Lite versions, and then you'd have the Pro versions.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I do think of how Apple, when even Google just do not have this problem.
I know it's such a Microsoft problem.
It really is, but I mean, it's also part of the reason why Windows has been successful is because they can hit different markets, right? I mean, Apple does not have a problem with, like, having to sell a ton of Mac OS licenses to an enterprise, a Fortune 500 company, right? It doesn't exist. First of all, you don't buy the license. You just buy a device and it has Mac OS on it. So problem solved. You mean you want 100 iPad Pros? All right, so just buy those. Whereas enterprise need to buy codes, right? They actually buy licenses because they could have a computer from 5 years ago that they want to upgrade to Windows 10. So they have that, and then they have, like, that feature stuff, with the difference between Pro, Enterprise, Education, and I've talked about this in the past where it's like, the reason they do that is not so they can necessarily make things more expensive, is so they can bring costs down. Because if you think of, like, maybe the base cost of Windows license is like $200, but that's too expensive for PC manufacturers. Okay, here's Home. It has less stuff in it, but it's only $100. That's what we'll charge you. That's actually kind of cool. That's how you get cheaper devices, right? And Lite could even be less than that, right? And so it goes into even more affordable products. And because ultimately, manufacturers, when they build these devices, know what they have to pay for the license for the OS. And we saw how that worked very well for Android, who charged nothing. Of course, there are the patent fees and stuff, but it's a balancing act. But it does, it is frustrating. And I don't know how you get around that. Like, I agree that renaming Windows with something new or something big would be kind of cool. But like I said, I think for people who are kind of conservative or who don't follow this stuff, immediately just raises questions. Well, wait, so it's a new operating system? Not that you
Yeah,
can't navigate this stuff. I mean, Xbox One from Xbox 360, figured it out, right? So when we went from 32-bit to 64-bit, there were problems there too. Stuff is solvable.
yeah.
It's beyond my pay grade. It's the reason why I host a podcast and
I think
design.
I think it's important for Microsoft to not differentiate Windows Core OS as a different or new operating system. I think it's more important for them to say, "Oh, it's still Windows 10," because it being able to run Win32 programs virtualized through the store is a selling point. Well, selling point. It's a thing it can do, and I think we want to avoid the Windows 8 Windows RT thing again, where it's like, oh, is it Windows RT? We don't want to have a bad reputation over the other. We want them to sort of be looked at on the same playing field.
Windows RT is going to be like, I think that's a great example because that was a really good, one of like, wait, so it's Windows? Well, yeah, mostly. Okay, can I install Photoshop? Well, no. And then you got
Yeah.
this like, and we have this issue with ARM a bit too, way less though, not nearly as restrictive, but there's still some issues there. Luckily, those are solvable issues in the sense that those are going to be fixed on the software end, whether it's the ARM64 stuff. So those problems will go away. It's not a fundamental, like with Windows RT, there was just like all that work wasn't done and it wasn't planned on being done. So there was no way around it. Yeah, I don't know. Tough stuff.
Someone's asking about GameCore. GameCore, for those who don't know, is I guess an Xbox flavor of Windows Core OS. I think there's more to it than that, but basically, it's not a consumer thing; it's a developer thing. It's APIs and stuff. It's so developers can build games on Windows Core OS and stuff. It's nothing interesting as far as I've looked into it. At least I haven't seen anything interesting out of it so far. Yeah. Also, briefly mention also the Light code name of the Light SKU was also seen alongside a Light Andromeda SKU. And the reason I say SKU, the reason I mention that is because what I think that is continuum mode for Andromeda. So what Andromeda does or has been able to do is it has this specific weird user experience for the dual screen tablet mode or whatever it is, the phone mode and stuff, when you're carrying it on its own. But then you can dock it up to a big screen, connect to a continuum, which I think is called productivity mode on Andromeda. And that boots into the Polaris desktop. And if Polaris has been renamed to Light, then Light Andromeda makes sense for that specific composer, because then it boots you into just the Light desktop, which has a taskbar, start menu, windowed apps, the usual, what you would expect a desktop to look like.
Yeah, weren't they calling these things like lenses?
I think they're composers. I think lenses. Yeah, lenses is another thing I've heard be used internally as well.
Yeah, it's just this idea of the operating system visually just to the task you're doing. So you have like a productivity mode where stuff shifts around. You have a game mode, all that. But it's the same operating system. It's just visibly it switches the way it looks, which is sort of this concept of having just a neutral OS that can live on other devices and adapt according to what you want to do. And again, someone's bringing up again, like they should just call it Windows. We've talked about this endlessly. I'll keep bringing it up again. The problem there is Windows is used as a generic term. It's like when there's the physical Windows, and so you have a problem with search stuff there. When you have a problem with Windows, if you go onto the internet, you do a search, you got to now separate real house glass windows from software windows. So there's that. There's also this fact that people just refer to Windows, whether it's Windows 7, Windows XP, Windows 10 as Windows. What OS? I run Windows, right? When you put the 10 there, it really does narrow down what exactly you're talking about. You could still go lower, like the SKU things with Pro and Home, but really we're not troubleshooting if you're troubleshooting something on Pro, it's probably going to be the same issue on Home, unless you're dealing with like RDM. But that's why it exists. Microsoft agrees with you. I think they would really like to just call it Windows, but it's like too generic. They could, I don't know. You have Mac OS, call it Windows OS.
Windows OS.
Like
Win OS.
Win OS, like.
Call it Doors.
Yeah, but you do need some sort of. It didn't even Mac OS gets broken down right into its.
Dan, I've got it. Let's just call it Aurora.
Exactly, Windows Aurora, something like that. But yeah, that's why they need some sort of specificity after the Windows part. But yeah.
So that's all we've got on Windows Lite. Windows Core OS is still very interesting. It's still being worked on. It's definitely happening. It's the 2X is the thing, so it has to be happening. I'm more interested in it on the Polaris / Lite stuff. Obviously, I want to see this succeed on desktop. That'd be pretty cool. Andromeda, if that ever ships, which it's supposed to next year, that will be Windows Core OS, and that will have a very unique experience. Assuming what me and Dan have seen so far of Andromeda OS is sort of still that by the time it ships. It could change dramatically between now and when it ships, especially if they're making the device bigger. I don't know what's going on there. All we know is Andromeda's still being worked on, which is, I guess, good news, but I'm kind of disappointed if it's not phone.
I still wonder if they're throwing out disinformation a bit too.
You know what? Because I keep hearing it's still a pocket-editable device. I think that might be happening. It could be just like, let's just tell them random stuff. Oh, it can fly? Oh, okay.
This is what the truth is. Probably they have two versions.
Yeah,
and they're both like, one of these will probably launch, but they're working on two different ideas. It may even been like they were working on the small pocketable version, but it's not just like, listen, just in case, hear me out, make a bigger version. We'll develop. They're going to be. I mean, besides the size, they should be basically the same though, right? And so I imagine they would just make like a bigger version, and then they're just going to kind of like usability test them and make a decision like which one they release. And that could be what we're hearing as a result of, oh, they're not doing the small one, they're doing the big one now. It could be something as simple as that, because we've seen this stuff before. They've had different ports on different devices. We know that there were Surface Book 2s or Surface Book 1s and Surface laptops with a Type-C port. Like, we know they've done this stuff. They've built these things internally. And for whatever reason, they don't release it. They decided at the last minute, no, we're going to stick with the mini display port this last season. So when we hear it, though, we don't hear that full story. So I'm a little cautious, too, and I'm leaning on this, like, I think it could be either or at this point. But
yeah, we'll see in a year's time.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of, wrap it up a little bit, Surface Go LTE. We shot the video review this week. It'll go live next week sometime. Not a lot to say on it. It's a really good device. Doesn't have eSIM, but it does have regular SIM on it. Gets a little bit less battery life. Problem is you end up using it more because it's always connected, and that 5 to 6 hours battery life really does become a hindrance. I also don't love the price, but you'll hear that in the review. So I'll try to do the written review too. I'm running out of time and energy. I got to fly out Sunday. We also did the Lenovo Yoga C630. I've been raving about that device for a while. So that's the foldable laptop device with the Snapdragon 850. We shot the video review for that, so make sure you check that out on YouTube as well. Really neat device, actually. I think for $800, it's actually a really good value for what it is. And upcoming stuff, I got a Razer Blade 15 sitting here somewhere on my floor, which I still got to review. That's the new entry-level version, still super expensive. I think there's going to be more Razer news coming out real soon, too, if you're into Razer's gaming laptops and everything. So a lot of cool stuff there. I still have the HP Folio to review. I got so much stuff to review and not enough time, and it's almost the end of the year. So what can we expect from you? Anything cool, Zach, you're working on?
I am currently working on a review for the Surface Mini prototype I have. I don't know when it will be ready because it's not really a priority for us since no one else has one. So we could kind of just sit on it. And I think I might save it for over Christmas because that's when news is slowest. And maybe I'll publish it on Christmas Day as a present to all of you Surface fans. I don't know, yeah. I'm working on it, so we'll see.
Very cool. Okay, now we'll do some Q&A with the audience. If you're listening to this live, you get to participate. If you're listening to us recorded, well, this is where the podcast will end. Unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. But you can always join us live Fridays, 2:30 p.m. We're usually on mixer.com/Windows Central and our YouTube channel at Windows Central. You can go there and bookmark that, catch the stream. You can also catch the replay. The video replays there as well. Both will have it. We'll see about next week about doing a podcast. If I do, it'll be I'm on the deck looking at the beach and talk about all the new Qualcomm news, which will be exciting. So we'll definitely try to do it. If not, I'll be back shortly after that. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Take care, everyone.
Excellent. So yes, any questions on YouTube or Mixer? I'm looking at both at least. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
I'm on Mixer right now, so I'll take that.
We'll hang around for maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. It's a Friday after all. Do you have any inside knowledge on when the next version of HoloLens is going to be talked about officially? We believe it will happen in spring. It could happen in January, February, but I think springtime is more likely. There might even be a March event. It will be the first half of 2019, put it that way, within the first half.
My theory is that we're going to hear something neat from Qualcomm this week.
It's cancelled.
We're going to hear something neat from Qualcomm this coming week, and that thing is going to play a part in HoloLens too. That's my theory. I don't know this for a fact. But, like, I'm willing to bet. Oh, we didn't mention the HoloLens in the military contract that happened. It's a pretty big deal. But I'm confident, or like to really believe, that HoloLens 2 will be ARM-based. First of all,
it is. I know it. I know for a fact it is.
Yeah. I mean, because the first one ran on Intel Atom Cherry Trail, which was garbage. But it ran, right? And it was a little slow and all that. Like, pretty much ARM is already past that, what we have now, but what's coming next, it'll even be better. You throw that with LTE on there, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, smaller chipset, more battery. Like, come on, this stuff writes itself, right? So, and when I think next week's news, when we hear that, we'll be like, oh, that may work in this thing. Like, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm just saying that could be the way that this is lining up. So that'd be really interesting.
Can someone explain what these Intel's new Universal Windows drivers are? So Universal Windows drivers is a new thing from Microsoft. I have seen documents on this internally, but I think what this is more laying the foundations for Windows Core OS devices. It just works on current Windows 10 as well. It's basically OEMs can build drivers now that work across these different sort of operating systems. They're universal, more or less. They're no longer legacy. They're universal drivers. They can be updated through Windows Update with ease, etc., etc. It's a good thing. Microsoft should be pushing this quite a bit to OEMs, more so than in the past, because it's a redone driver system for Windows, as far as I'm aware. I'm trying to find the information I had on this, but I cannot find it right now, unfortunately.
So it says if Buckster says, I feel the ARM chips are always, the next chips are going to be the ones you want. That's not what I'm really saying, actually. The Snapdragon 850 for me has actually been, I use that device all the time, two of them. I have the Galaxy Book 2 and the C630. For what I do, actually, they're basically enough. Sometimes I need more horsepower. But the reason why we say that is simple, because one, Windows people are kind of like annoying. And I mean, in the sense that everyone has a different requirement, what they consider acceptable. Yet people up there going, that laptop should have a Core i9 processor. Like those people are not going to be satisfied with ARM for a very long time. Meanwhile, you have a lot of people who are like, the Intel Atom, stuff isn't that bad, or I use a Core i3 and I'm pretty happy with it. Like, while those people are going to be way more acceptable or accepting of an ARM chip. So you have a wide spread in PC world. So when I talk about whatever's coming next, but this is all processors. They're always going to be improved and faster and better and more efficient. Like that's the nature of the technology we're in. Whether it's right for you, A, I don't actually care. B, it depends. It depends on you, what you want to expect out of a computer. Because we all have different definitions of what a PC should be. I swear to God, on my YouTube comments for our video, like I could be talking about, here's a business laptop, thinnest 13-inch in the world, razor thin, weighs 2.2 pounds, does this, gets it 10 hours of battery life, should have a Core i9 and a GTX 1060. Garbage. Like that guy, he doesn't want this computer. He wants a different computer, and that's fine, but that's why. So don't get into this ARM is always going to be the next thing. It's two things. The chips are evolving rapidly, and they really are. And you're seeing Qualcomm really commit to this stuff. And then you're seeing the OS stuff adapt rapidly to it. And those two things create an ecosystem. But it's just like Windows 10. People are like, well, Windows 10 always feels unfinished. They're always releasing updates. Like, yeah, that's the point. When is an operating system finished? iOS is apparently not finished. Android is apparently not finished. So this stuff is never finished. You just have to at some point jump in and be like, this is good enough for me. This is what I want. So there you go.
Couple of interesting questions here. When will the next Surface Book come out? The rumors are the first half of 2020 is the Surface Book.
I think that's safe.
Makes sense.
The current hardware is pretty robust for a long time. I think.
Yeah, another year I can see happening.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything more about the Journal app rumored for Andromeda? Will it be similar to Whiteboard? In fact, it's more or less the same app. The only difference is that the Andromeda version has a design specific to a dual screen journal experience. All the same features and functions in the Whiteboard app or in the Journal app, plus the Journal app has a couple of additional things with the camera and whatnot. The sticky notes, a lot of what you see in the Whiteboard app was first built for the Journal app. It's just been ported to the Whiteboard experience. When I first read about Andromeda back in, I guess, 2017 now. Has it really been that long? I wrote that it was a journal experience that had the ability to ink everywhere. It had, you could invite people to your journal and you could both ink on the same pages and stuff. And that was all Whiteboard, more or less. It's all powered by Whiteboard. The Whiteboard experience is very, very similar to the Andromeda experience. Like I said, the only real difference is that the Andromeda app has a journal. It's got a line down the middle. There's pages that you can swipe between the pages and stuff, and content sort of folds over each other and whatever else. It's a cool idea. What is product _ IoT Edge OS? I have no idea. I assume it's some flavor of IoT. Nothing exciting if that's the case. Nothing exciting to me. If Windows Core OS goes to Xbox, do you think we'll eventually get Xbox and Xbox 360 games on Windows everywhere? I don't think so. I don't think that's what Microsoft... There needs to be a reason for consoles to exist, and I think the backwards compatibility play is where that is.
Do you see the Surface headphone ones? I'll answer those. So why are you both using a wire on your wireless headphones? Well, first of all, I mean, they come with a wire for a reason. They're not strictly wireless. 2, I have a ton of Bluetooth devices on right now, just for consistency. Also, 3, there were some issues I had at the last minute setting this up and trying to get it worked with Windows 10 PC, but then with the Skype actual audio routing was having an issue. We didn't want to have any issues during the podcast, so it's just safer to do it this way. 2, are you really using the Surface headphones or just wearing them? No, we're using them for audio. Yeah. We're not using them mics because we're not dumb. Listen, the mics on these are okay, but this microphone I have in front of me costs more than most of your smartphones out there, okay? This whole setup I have is very expensive. The concept of this being this being as good as that is insane. So no, there's a reason why we don't use these in recording studios either. I'm sure they would have been okay, but I'm not going to make a podcast.
And we're only wearing these this week because it's funny, right? More than anything. We were going to our normal setup this week.
Yeah, we both
these are more music listening and stuff than listening to each other talk for an hour. Yeah, and someone's saying, are they still comfortable? Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. My ears don't feel pressed up against them. They've got room and stuff. It's very nice. Is Andromeda going to have more apps at the introduction? I don't have a time machine. I can't tell you. Microsoft is trying to fix the app problem with PWAs and whatnot, but I honestly can't tell you if it will be successful or not.
Are you going to be reviewing the new HP Spectre laptops? Yeah, as soon as HP sends them out. I buy a lot of devices too. Sometimes I bought the Surface Go LTE, the Lenovo one to get those because I like them, and I wanted to get the reviews done without waiting sometimes. HP sometimes is a little slow on stuff. I won't buy the Spectres though because of the trackpads. I love, and you saw, I wrote an editorial on this already. I love everything about those laptops. I would use those laptops as my dailies if I could, but the trackpads are deal breakers for me. Everybody has a line. That's my line. And the trackpads for most of you will be good enough and okay. And some people are going to say making a mountain out of a molehill here. That's fine. But I have my standards and I need precision. That's it. That's the end of the story. But we will review them and I'll be fair. I'll just, again, point that out when I do review them. Are you still there, Zach?
I am there. Sorry, I had my mic muted. I may have missed something, but what's the Surface Mini you've got? It was a cancelled Surface. It was a tiny mini Surface. It ran Windows RT. You'll learn more when I do my review in December. Do you recommend the Surface headphones or wait for Gen 2? do we even know there will be a Gen 2? They're headphones. I mean, I guess there will be eventually, but who knows when. If you're in need of a pair of headphones right now that have what's the noise cancellation and stuff, and a sleek, well, maybe not sleek, but a cool design with touch controls and stuff, then get these. They're pretty good.
Yeah, go read my review. My review I thought was really fair and balanced. I basically said they have room to grow and improve, but for the version 1.0, they're really impressive. Version 2, I think, basically the Surface team has demonstrated to me that they can make serious headphones. Like the idea that they were going to release these and out the gate they were going to beat like Sony and Bose, I thought was unrealistic. Like that's really hard to do, right? But version 2.0 shows me that they could actually do that. But it depends how they sell. You know, the good news is if you go read other reviews, not even my own, they've been very positive. Not everything, but better than you would suspect for something we didn't really even ask for. Surface headphones don't support Dolby Atmos. I have Dolby. You have Dolby Sonic and Windows Sonic and Dolby. What's the other? Oh, no, what are you talking about? I'm using them right now. Spatial sound. It supports it in Windows. So I have spatial sound, Dolby Atmos for headphones enabled, and it's working. So I don't know what you mean that Dolby Atmos doesn't work. But if you can clarify that, I can maybe ask. Which Fitbit clock face are you wearing today? So that's a little chat. That's if you see him in the chat room on Mixer, he actually made our Windows Central watch face. And he has a bunch of other really good ones out there too. Actually, I do really enjoy his work. But I'm laughing because I'm actually using the Charge 3 this week, which doesn't have designer watch faces on them. So I like jumping between. I'm such a Fitbit head. I jump between all the devices. But I actually really like the band style. I'm more of the problem with the watch faces on Fitbit is I've become an addict, and I just sit there once a night. I just scroll through it because there's always new ones, and you're like, that could look cool, and you install it. Like,
I never change mine. Yeah,
you and Mark has never changed his default one. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you?
I do change it to 1, but once I've got it, I leave it as because I can't.
You don't want to go down the rabbit hole. It's really like. There's so many cool things out there.
It also annoys me because there's so many almost perfect ones, but they're almost perfect. It's like, I just wish this icon was there, or I wish that bit wasn't there. It's just, it really annoys me. It's like, ugh.
It's amazing the amount of like watch faces that they've created out there. I don't know. It's really fun.
I'm in the market for headphones, but I'm hesitant on paying £330 for Surface headphones because they're Microsoft. Feel safer with Bose. I mean, if you have that, if Microsoft has that reputation for you, then fine. But they are only headphones. They're not going to stop working if Microsoft abandons them. You know, it's like they're standalone products. It's not like they're not a service. They don't need to be.
I really see. I feel strongly about this. I mean, Bose for me is a local company. Their headquarters is not far from where I live. I use their sport headphones. I have two. I have their wired sports and their sport free ones. I use those every day. And I've had the QC15s for years. So I really like Bose. I see no reason you would buy Bose QC35-2s over these. Zero. The noise cancellation is slightly better. The audio quality is not as good, and it recharges through micro USB and has clumsy buttons on it. I just do not see how any of that is advantageous compared to the Surface headphones. I think the real question is Surface headphones or the Sonys, because we're talking about the same price point basically for all of these. I think that's the real choice. And to be honest, I think the Sonys are the better product overall. But they have this one flaw, which is you can't use them with two devices at the same time. So if you have them paired with your PC and a phone call comes in, well, you can't switch between them dynamically. And they're not fixing that. That's part of their design. And so for some people, they don't care. They're like, I'm just going parent to my phone, and that's it. Then get the Sonys, I would say. But the whole selling point with these from Microsoft is like use them with two devices at the same time while you're at work. And and more people I talk to, they're like, yeah, that's a critical feature for me. Then don't get the Sonys because it's super annoying. Then I would get the Surface headphones. But I don't see any advantage with the Bose right now. I hate to say that, but we'll have to wait and see.
What do you think the rumored ambient Surface device is, the one Brad mentioned? We literally just spent an hour talking about it on the podcast. You missed it. You can go back and watch the on-demand version. We talk about it in there. It's basically TLDR. It's something me and Dan have reported on a few months ago. It's a tabletop speaker powered by Cortana, but its focus is on the meeting room and enterprise and business and being productive. Sure, you might be able to use it in a home environment as well if you really want to, but I think Microsoft is pushing it towards being a more enterprisey, businessy thing.
Getting a lot of Fitbit questions here, which I do love.
Can start Fitbit Central.
And seriously, I should do a review of the new Charge 3 and all that kind of stuff. But I do feel Fitbit had more bugs recently. Yeah, I'll be honest. Like the was it Fitbit OS 2.2 that you can get now? Now that it's running on my Versa, it's been fine. Getting it to 2.2 was a nightmare. Like that is one area. Like Apple Watch takes forever to update, but it works when it does. This I had a lot of problems pairing getting the update to actually take. They definitely have a lot of work to do in that regard. But I don't have a problem with the syncing. It could be better, but I don't really have an issue with it. Related to that, as someone who doesn't work out much, I'll die young, don't care. Yeah, that's fine. Is there really, I'm the same way. Is there really, I don't work out to live forever. I work out so the time I am here, I don't feel gross. Is there really a need for any of your favorite smartwatches? It's a great question. That's kind of why I'm using the Charge 3. There's not much functionality difference between this and the Versa. So now also asked, do I still like the Versa? I love the Versa. I think it's actually kind of perfect. The problem is I never use the apps stuff. I don't use smartwatches in that regard. I could care less. And part of it's because the apps suck on Fitbit, but it also is because I don't want to use a device like that. So me going down to a more minimalist Charge 3, I still get all the benefits of the Versa and a lighter form factor with more battery life, like 2 more days of battery life. To me, this is a very unobtrusive device, $150. Gives you health and fitness. It works very well with notifications. So you still get all that stuff. You get weather and all that. I really, really like this, though. But if you're like me, you're just not intrigued by smartwatches at all, or you don't want complicatedness, I think the Charge 3 is the way to go.
Has Microsoft learned from their mistakes from the lack of games with Xbox One? I don't think it's Microsoft's mistake. I think it's just developers. I mean, yeah, Microsoft knows that having first-party games or exclusives even is important for gamers, but I think Microsoft has seen success elsewhere for Xbox now where that isn't a huge problem if they don't have them anymore. Because, I don't know if you've seen the news, but Xbox is doing pretty well right now. Even though they're second in the console.
I heard NPD is purposely inflating their numbers to cover up for Microsoft.
Oh, but when Sony's doing well, it's totally accurate and
right.
Not at all an issue. Anyway, I don't think it's not the end of the world if Xbox doesn't have them anymore because there's other selling points to an Xbox now. One being the most powerful console, so any cross-platform games run better on Xbox than they do on PlayStation. Simple as. 2, backwards compatibility is monstrous compared to what Sony offers on the PS4. It pales in comparison to the generations of games you can get on an Xbox One. I don't know, better ecosystem. I don't know what you. Microsoft is seeing positive numbers on Xbox right now, which is good. And I don't think. Sure, having extra games is nice, but I don't think that's going to change much for the success of Xbox going forwards.
Can I hear much difference between Dolby Atmos versus Windows Sonic? Good question. No. All the faux spatial stuff is interesting. I do turn it on my devices, but yeah, I'm not an audiophile, and I'm actually proud of that. But I really, it's like giving me a wine. It's like, tastes like wine. That's about as sophisticated as I am with this stuff. And when I hear the audio the only thing I can tell you, Sonic is free and the Dolby one, it costs you money. I haven't seen, I guarantee I could be told, I'd love to, Dolby is actually good at this. When I'll see them at CES, I'll ask them and they'll give me a demo of this stuff and they'll walk me through like how this system is better. But I find it, I'll try it again to see if I can hear a difference. I'm sure there is, but I'm not a very good person to ask on this. Does the Surface headphones charge faster with a dedicated USB charger, such as the one used for your phone, rather than using the inbox cable? The cable won't matter too much. The source matters. If you're going to if you have like a block charger that came with your Galaxy phone, it's basically the wattage amount because Type C chargers you can connect up a 65-watt charger to it or even a 100-watt charger. I don't think the Surface won't pick up that much charge coming in. But I don't think it matters too much. It does matter if you're connected up to USB to say your computer. It has maybe a slower charge that way versus a wall jack, maybe. I haven't really noticed much difference between the two. But you can pretty much use any Type C cable and charger solution, and they'll charge. Could the Surface headphones ever get a firmware update to other audio codecs, or is that hardware limited? I would assume they could if they wanted to. It's also related, I would think, to the Bluetooth. I think that's probably the bigger thing. It's Bluetooth 4.1 or 4.2, not 5, which kind of sucks. I think 5 would open up a lot more things to that. I don't think they're going to. I'd be surprised if they added more codecs. It'd be more, I think, functionality and stuff like that. But we'll have to wait and see.
Microsoft should be aiming to be first with Xbox, not just doing well, and they won't get there without exclusives. Plus, they have the most powerful console for now, not forever. I think it's very easy for Microsoft to always have the most powerful console. If Sony releases a more powerful console, Microsoft can just release an even more powerful.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't. Microsoft can always have the most powerful console if it so pleases. Which it does. It will. Like Microsoft has that manpower. It has the brains behind Surface to be able to manufacture a product that can be powerful in a box the size of a book or something. It's they can do that. Regarding exclusives, Microsoft has brought up a loads of studios recently, so they are pushing for more exclusives. But I don't think it's number one priority for them right now. I think game streaming and backwards compatibility and overall ecosystem is more important for Microsoft than just focusing on exclusives, because exclusives don't mean sales. Crackdown 3 is not going to do well, I can tell you that. And that's an exclusive game. A lot of Xbox exclusives don't do well. Sea of Thieves, where's that? You can have exclusives, it doesn't matter. It's
also the issue. Oh, I just turned the noise amplification up. That was weird. Also, the issue with exclusives, though, is that you have to pay. Sony has to pay for that, and so you have to measure. It's just like a movie, right? It's like that movie made $180 million at the box office. Oh my God, $180 million! And then it's like, yeah, but it costs $280 million to make a market. It's just like, oh, that's the same issue you face with exclusives. Is like you got to pay for all that stuff, so your return value has to usually far exceed sort of what you brought in to have made it worth it, right? So if, like, in other words, if say a game just cost $50 million to make and you sold and you brought in $70 million, dollars. Okay, so profit $20 million, all right. So it seems like a success, but had you not made an exclusive, could you still have made a game and still made $20 million, right? So it needs to really be a big hit. I would say with Sony in their, Spider-Man seems to have done pretty well for them, and they have seemed to have chosen the right path for these exclusives, and that's good for them in terms of consoles. I'm still hearing though that the money that they pay versus their returns is super slim. And so it may look good because all the whiz-bang graphics and commercials everywhere, and you hear people talking about it. But in terms of the raw numbers, I've heard that Sony's in kind of a precarious situation because you're always overspending to get to that next thing. This is the problem Spotify had too. You're always laying out a ton of money with this bet of you're going to get it back eventually. And that's extending yourself pretty far in a market that has a lot of competition. So the stuff may not be as clear cut as just get exclusives. Not to mention most people, I think it was on average buy 2 games a year. Zach and I are definitely not part of that group, but most people aren't buying a new game every month or every week. And with Game Pass, they're getting way more value out of that anyway. So
I think we're slowly going to start to see Sony have to push back against games at this point, because very much with the PS4, Sony has very much been pandering towards gamers. They've very much oh yeah, we do everything the gamers want, unlike Xbox, which was very much like, let's do more than just gaming for Xbox, and gamers refuted that and pushed it back and hated it, which is why PS4 ultimately won this generation. But I think we're going to see Sony get to a point where they can't keep just pandering to gamers anymore, because what gamers want is ridiculous. Like, they just want everything.
Yeah.
It's like the world is moving forward. Digital is the next big thing. And there are gamers who are still like clinging onto their physical media, and I get that, but that isn't forever. At some point, Sony's going to have to go, right, digital is the way forward here, because it's the way forward. So Xbox knew this in 2013 when the Xbox One was first announced. They knew that digital was the way forward, and gamers like, I can't believe they're doing digital DRM, blah blah blah. And Sony did that video where they're just like, here's how you trade on a PS4. You pass the physical media to someone else, and that like 10-second video. Genius marketing. But that's pandering. That's not admitting that that's just saying, don't worry, guys, don't worry about what those are doing. Let's keep to what we know. But what we know isn't going to be like that forever. And I think gamers are going to be in for a huge wake up call, especially PS4 players. I think PC gamers are already on this industry. Everything's digital on PC now. Steam is 100% a digital platform. I think PS4 gamers are going to be the most hard hit, or PlayStation gamers, when it comes to moving on to the future.
Chad has and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. Are they Chad? I don't know. He says, I don't think exclusives are good for gamers. They only benefit the publishers and console manufacturers. Gamers should not push for exclusives. That's the smartest thing yet, right? That's 100% true. It is weird that gamers push for exclusives as if they benefit from them, and they don't. But this is when you're doing the bidding of your corporate overlords, and and really not getting any benefit from it whatsoever. It's more interesting when you see a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 come out, and it comes out on all platforms, and then you're like, all right, which platform actually does it play best on? And now it's it's like Xbox One X seems to have the best playability with the best highest resolution, all this versus. And so now you get to actually evaluate just based on the hardware and what those companies have done for you. That I think is, and that's the same with carriers too. We always say that with carriers. It's like, stop with all these weird exclusive phone times. Just sell me a dumb pipe, and you live and die in the fact that dumb pipe is good. Like, that's competition. But yeah, we should not be rooting for exclusives. It's bad for gamers. There's no benefit from it. It's stupid because it creates this weird fanboyism which is so dumb. Mm-hmm. Like, seriously, as if you're a male listening to this and you're in your 20s, I'm going to be the older guy and tell you, like, listen, when you're in your 30s, you're going to look back at that guy and be like, that guy was an idiot. Everybody changes from your 20s to your 30s and 40s. And it's a big change. And the things that were super important to you in your 20s, you just don't care about when you're turned 30 and 40. It's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, you're probably still living in a basement playing video games by yourself. Sorry. But yeah.
Get a girlfriend or boyfriend.
Yes.
Yeah, Xbox One X is the most powerful console. Games run best there. Simple as. Game Pass and Xbox Home is the future. Or Home Share. Yeah. Streaming, all that
someone
stuff.
Says Sony pockets aren't as deep as Microsoft. That's 100% true. Microsoft long term is better positioned for this stuff than Sony is. Sony is a big company, but the gaming is just a small division of theirs. It does all right, but the rest of the company is not doing all right. And the whole cloud stuff, I think they're going to get their butts kicked on.
My favorite thing about Sony fans or PlayStation fans is that when the PS4, because when PS3 and Xbox 360 was a thing, PSN, like the PlayStation's version of Xbox Live, was free. You can play online for free, whereas Xbox Live has always been a paid service. You have to pay for gold to play online with your friends. And obviously PS3 fans are like, haha, you have to pay, but even though Xbox won that generation, Xbox 360 won that generation. The Xbox Live service was a more premium service compared to PSN. PSN was kind of rubbish. But then with PS4, Sony was like, oh, you have to pay for online now as well. And Sony fans, instead of immediately being like, oh, that sucks, Sony, they immediately blamed Microsoft for normalizing the idea. Like, that's such a funny thing to me. It's like, don't blame the guys who made that decision. Blame the other people where they got the idea from. It's like, no. People can think on their own, Anyway, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
For now. Yes, so we might be back next week. We might not. Follow us on Twitter, because Dan is going to be away. So if he can't get a moment to sit down with us, then we won't do one. But we will So actually, because it's Christmas soon, isn't it? What's going on? So next week, maybe not, but then we'll probably be back on the 14th, and we'll probably do one on the 21st, but I'm not around on the 28th. So yeah, we've got a few more episodes this year before we say goodbye to 2018. Very exciting. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. Follow us on Twitter, and we shall see you in the next one.